Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls, and you're listening to Rainbow Country.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, we find out about a new South African trans dramedy, Runs in the Family, a movie about a dad and his transgender son. Plus, we find out about outACTRAto. All that and more on episode 354, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Garrett Conley, author of Boy Erased, a memoir.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Segato.
Hi, I'm Gord Depp with the Spoons. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together, we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #2 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, award-winning filmmaker Ian Gabriel and actor Gabe Gabriel join me to talk about their new South African trans dramedy, Runs in the Family. A film about the relationship between a dad and his transgender son. And yes, Gabe and Ian are father and son, and Gabe is Ian's transgender son. And together they created their new trans film, Runs in the Family. By the way, Runs in the Family makes its world premiere at the 33rd Annual Inside Out LGBT Film Festival, Thursday, June 1st, and streams Ontario-wide Friday, June 2nd. And later on in the hour, ACTRA. First of all, what is ACTRA? ACTRA is the Union for Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Arts, while ACTRA has a LGBTQ+ subcommittee called outACTRAto, established in 2018. outACTRAto advocates for gender and sexually diverse performers. Today I'm joined by co-chairs and actors Talia Gonzalez-Kane, Matt Lemke, as well as the president of ACTRA Toronto, actor David Gale. By the way, David Gale was the host of the popular and award-winning cooking show Loving Spoonfuls from the early 2000s. Love that show. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some classic house, some queer a cappella, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 354 through Rainbow Country. And our first stop is what I like to call the Rainbow Country School for Canadian Gay History. And on today's lesson from activist, author, and historian Tim McCaskill, Canada's Gay Pride History.
"1969 was a big year. It was the year that saw both the Stonewall riots in New York and more or less decriminalization of gay sex in Canada. The following year, the Americans celebrated the anniversary of Stonewall with Christopher Street Liberation Day. That was the summer of 1970. They didn't actually call it Pride at the time. August 1st, 71 was Toronto's first official gay picnic at Hanlon's Point. It was organized by the Community Homophile Association of Toronto and Toronto Gay Action. 300 people showed up. Now, that wasn't officially a pride, but Gerald Moldenhauer, one of the veterans of those days, maintains that a march down Yonge Street a few weeks later should be called the first Toronto Pride. That was a warm-up for the more famous We Demand demonstration in Ottawa held August 28th that year, a protest against the inadequacies of Trudeau's decriminalization. By the way, if you want to see some pictures of those early days, check out Gerald's website. It's geraldmoldenhauer.com, and it's spelled JERALDMOLDENHAUER. The first official Toronto Pride was actually the next year, 1972, again in August. Then there was a second Gay Pride Week, August 17th to 26th, 1973. That one was national, not just Toronto. There were events and marches in Vancouver, Saskatoon, Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax. The focus was political, on ending discrimination against queers, something that was still quite legal across the country at the time. Then, the following year, 1974, there was Pride number 3 in Toronto, August 17th. I came out of that one, so I remember it very, very well. We marched over to Queen's Park to again demand human rights protection. And then they stopped. There was nothing in 75. People were focused on a national lesbian and gay conference in Ottawa. And again in 76, all of us in Toronto were busily preparing to host the 4th National Lesbian and Gay Conference, which happened in September. Gay Days was a big festival in 78, but nothing called itself Pride again until 1981 after the Bath Raids. That's where the misconception that Pride began after the Bath Raids comes from. 81, I suppose, is significant because that's when the shift happened from August to the last weekend in June to harmonize with prides across the US. But that's not the first Pride. So when you hear someone say that the first Toronto Pride was in 1981, you should politely point out that that's not quite true. Toronto and other cities in Canada had our own August Prides for almost a decade before that. And there are still those of us around who remember. This is Tim McCaskill, a gay liberation dinosaur from another planet and author of Queer Progress.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, Runs in the Family.
So, what's all this fuss about?
Your mother has reached out.
I don't have a mother.
Fine, my ex-girlfriend and your first home has reached out. She wants us to pick her up in Eswatini.
In Eswatini? Why?
Because she wants to leave.
Okay, she's proven pretty good at that. Why doesn't she?
She's been confined in a rehabilitation clinic there.
Oh, of course she'd be a junkie.
River, don't be rude.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I'm just glad to hear that she's even alive. Oh, no, wait. Sorry, don't care.
Look, she's been banished there by some dodgy ex-boyfriend, and only a relative can sign her out of the facility. And she's never really had any family. She's sadly untethered in that way. So, her only hope is her only child.
Sorry, Dad, but I just don't think that I can be the one
River, she needs you.
And? Where was she when I needed her? Certainly not crossing borders to come see me. Her offspring, by the way.
Ian Gabriel, hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Gabriel. Hello.
Yes.
How are you?
Hello. I'm well, thanks. How are you, Mark?
I am good. Thank you both for being here to have your voices, your stories be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about your new film, Runs in the Family. Ian, let's start with yourself. You directed this film. Talk to me about what Runs in the Family is essentially about.
Well, it's really about the relationship between a dad and his transgender son. And I happen to be the dad of a transgender son. My son, Gabriel, wrote the screenplay. It came about as a result of a lot of discussions between us. He also acts in it, and he was also my second unit director. So he and I have made a film that we're very proud of as a transgender father and son.
So, Gabe, you wrote this film. You star in this film. Your dad just mentioned you worked as behind the scenes as well. What was the flashpoint? What inspired you to write this film? Talk to me about that aspect of it.
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you. I haven't seen that much positive representation of trans family life, and especially not a father-son relationship like ours. My dad and I are collaborators and friends, and we have a really strong relationship that really is seldom shown on screen. So I wanted to write a story that reflected that didn't deny the challenges that come up with being first of all, a trans person, and second of all, a trans person in family and in relation to family and broader community, but that spoke to it as well as spoke to just the regular sort of yearnings and feelings in life that we have as people.
So, Ian, you said that you've never seen a relationship like this before on TV or on film. A dad and his transgender child, in this case, son. When you first read the completed script, what did you think?
Well, the first thing I loved about it was the sense of humor. It's very light. It's an easygoing story. It's a funny film, and it's a very easygoing story. And that's what I loved about it. It doesn't dodge any of the questions that might be asked about the relationship between a dad and his son who is transgender, but it has fun revealing how that works out. So that's what I loved about the screenplay. And then I loved Gabe's translation of the character of River, who's the young boy in the film.
So
Gabe is a very fine actor.
Thank you, Dad.
So, Gabe, you came out as trans in 2019, and I'm assuming that Runs in the Family is your first project since coming out. So, here's a question: what did you think of seeing yourself, maybe as you've seen yourself in your mind, seeing yourself on screen now, the way that you see yourself internally? What went through your mind the first time that you saw this completed film?
It was quite incredible. I had not acted. I'd worked on other projects in the capacity of a writer since coming out, so I'd gotten used to being in the room and being it was known that I was trans in those rooms, writers' rooms, but I hadn't seen myself reflected on screen much aside from kind of like short film type things that I had shot in my own garden sort of thing. So to watch it in the context of a film, which requires so many different people to make it come together, and a real belief in a story and a world, was really incredible. And it was also quite unusual because I never imagined myself playing a character so close to home, this close to home, not just in terms of gender, but in terms of, the whole world that we created and the people around River, the character. And there were also then some things that were different from me that I had to find. For example, the character is someone who's hoping for top surgery, whereas I had already had top surgery by the time we shot, but I really wanted to capture the kind of angst leading up to trying to be able to afford top surgery, for example. So I wanted to capture that sense that I had related to in the past, but no longer felt, because I'm on the other side of that now. So it was a really interesting process in many ways.
Mm. It's interesting because there is a scene in the film where you see yourself in the mirror.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's a great scene.
Thank you.
It's a very poignant scene, and it works so well because Gabe is informed from both sides of that of what the character of River is imagining in that scene. So I think it was a really poignant scene and really touched very deep in the story.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the toughest scenes to shoot because I really felt it. I felt the relief of no longer feeling that way, but I also felt the pain of what it felt like being pre-surgery, a surgery that I wanted and not knowing how I was ever going to get it.
So, Ian, you've worked with the likes of Nelson Mandela, Charlize Theron, Cristiano Ronaldo. Your 2015 film, Four Corners, was South Africa's official submission for Best Foreign Language Film at the 86 Academy Awards. What did it mean to have your film be chosen by your country for consideration for an Academy Award? What did that mean to you?
Yes. Well, it was fantastic. It was a great opportunity for us, and we were very surprised at the time because a bit unexpected, rather a lot like Runs in the Family, edgy and unexpected. It was something where we'd gone out on a limb and made a film that in an area that other people were not really dealing with at the time. Since then, a lot of people have started to deal with the particular area of film that Four Corners is about, which is life on the Cape Flats, which is, for those who know South Africa, life on the Cape Flats is the life of the mixed race, the coloured people of South Africa. And we say coloured as opposed to the black people of South Africa. And it's a specific cultural term in South Africa.
A non-offensive term, I do want to add.
Yeah, absolutely. So that it was interesting to be working in that area because no one else was making those kind of films at the time, and now a lot of people are. I'm hoping, and I think it's also true with Runs in the Family, that we're going to see more and more stories of transgender people, and hopefully more and more of those will be positive stories that reflect on the growing acceptance and understanding of the range of possibilities in life.
The love of my life abandoned us when my son was just a baby girl. This is one of the lines in the film. I love that line.
Yes, it's great.
Here's my last question, and it's to the two of you. And Gabe, I'll start with yourself. What do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen Runs in the Family?
Thank you. That's a nice question. I hope that people understand that, first of all, we are not a monolith. Looking and being trans is completely different for every trans person. There are as many ways to be trans as there are trans people, as is the case with cis folks. And so I hope that people get to see that we have full, very incredible, full, also dull, also varied stories. You know, we're not just a story of bravery, or we're not just a story of oppression or trauma. We're really full of life. We have as much life that we've lived as the next person. So I hope that people get to see that. And more importantly, to my community, to the trans and non-binary community, there's a little message, for lack of a better word, for us in this film, which says that no surgery or no hormones or no particular way of being what society might think qualifies transness makes you more trans or more yourself. You are just you, and there's no one way to be non-binary or to be trans, and hormones and surgery don't define us.
Well said. And Ian, for yourself, what do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen Runs in the Family?
I hope they come away with a sense of how true the sense of fun and lightness is in our story. It's a very fun, light story. And I think that light touch is something that will reach far. I hope it will reach very far. I don't think it's going to be taken as a heavy movie, and I don't think it's going to. I hope it's not going to just land with a few people. I think it's going to land with a large and accepting audience of queer and non-queer folk alike.
I'd like to add one thing also, is that I hope that it brings hope to trans folks whose parents maybe they're afraid of telling that they are trans, because I was pleasantly surprised by my dad's response, and he's gone and made a whole movie with me about how you can love and accept your trans kid in a beautiful way. So it's a beacon of hope for me, and I hope that extends to everyone who watches it.
Yeah, that would be a great thing. Yeah.
Well said. Ian, Gabe, thank you both for your time. Well said, well done, well filmed. It's a funny, powerful film, and the locations and the scenery is gorgeous. South Africa looks great. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Can I tell you something? That boy doesn't know what's good for him. Well, spoiler alert, everyone, I'm good for him.
Well, we've got one for you. The love of my life abandoned us when my son here was just a baby girl. And now we've just jumped over the border fence to try and rescue her from a rehab clinic a few kilometers that way. We just need a ride for the last leg.
I'm sorry, you two are father and son. Shame you didn't look cock-white. What happened?
He has his mother's complexion.
Anyway then, come up in. Chop, chop. Yeah, come.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I'm sorry.
By the way, Runs in the Family makes its world premiere at the 33rd Annual Inside Out LGBT Film Festival, Thursday, June 1st, and streams Ontario-wide, Friday, June 2nd. For more information, insideout.ca.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford, Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
The 33rd Annual Inside Out LGBT Film Festival runs in person in Toronto at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, Thursday, May 25th to Sunday, June 4th, and streams province-wide in Ontario. The best place to start? Check out the website, insideout.ca. There you can search for films by interest like BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, Trans, Bisexual, Coming of Age, Non-Binary, Mental Health, and more. You can even search by format: documentary, narrative, or short. There are even films that are part of this year's festival that have been featured right here on Rainbow Country. Films like This Place, the award-winning film Something You Said Last Night, Queendom. The 33rd Annual Inside Out LGBT Film Festival runs in person in Toronto at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, Thursday, May 25th to Sunday, June 4th, and streams province-wide in Ontario. For all things festival, insideout.ca.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
Up next, we find out about outACTRAto. David Gale, hi, how are you?
I am so good. So glad to be here again. I've done your show a couple of times.
You have. Talia Gonzalez-Kane, hi.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks. How about yourself?
I am well. Thank you for asking. Matt Lemke, bonjour, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci. Et vous?
Ah, pas mal. That's
I tried my best.
I have to say thank you all for being here, to have your voices, your stories be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about outACTRAto. outACTRAto. David Gale, you are the president of ACTRA Toronto. You're on your second term. Talk to me about ACTRA and what ACTRA is all about. Let's start there.
ACTRA is the union for on-screen performers, digital performers. So, if you're for film, TV, radio, internet, those animation, commercials, that is the union for recorded media, right? Recorded media, actors, performers in recorded media in Canada. And we are ACTRA Toronto, which is the largest of 9 branches. And we represent approximately 15,000 unionists, union performers.
So talk to me about outACTRAto. outACTRAto. What is outACTRA Toronto?
outACTRA Toronto is the first queer committee in our ACTRA Toronto's history. So ACTRA has a number of committees that deal with diversity, that deal with specifically women's issues. We have for people who are working in the voice performing world area, committees that get together, members get together, sometimes elected members get together, and through committee work, have workshops, have projects, have sometimes we do readings. There's just so many things that we do. We put out pamphlets, what it's like to work within our union. I'd be very interested in having Matt or Talia take over because they are the current co-chairs of this committee, and I'd love to hear their take on it as well because we've grown over the years. We've been around for about 5-6 years.
Matt, why don't you take that? And then Talia, you can jump in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, outACTRA is a community of performers who are part of the larger 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And we're working together to bring awareness to 2S LGBTQIA plus performers and the stories that we have to tell. And, putting the spotlight on authentic casting so that we can tell our own stories. I feel like that's one of the major drives behind outACTRAto, and that was sort of the brainchild of Joe Vanicola.
Talia, did you want to add anything to this?
Absolutely. Yeah. So essentially each month we meet up and have meetings. They've all been on Zoom because of the pandemic, as so many things are these days. But yeah, so we'll get together and we have the group and we have different subcommittees. And so those are really the most active driving force within the committee, I'd say. We have our social media team who shares and spreads the word about queer 2S LGBTQIA plus performers around what's happening. We also work in activism. We have mixer subcommittees, so we get together as a group and really spend some time together and forge more connections within the industry. We also have pride planning committees. We do different events to help amplify 2S LGBTQIA plus voices as well. So we do things like reading series with Working the Scene in Rainbow. We also have a Queer Your Stories competition that we do in partnership with the Inside Out Festival. And with that, we actually provide a prize and some financial support to a short film to 2S LGBTQIA plus performers and allows them to create their own work. So it's really all about amplifying the community as much as we can and bringing us together and sharing resources and just seeing how we can support each other and further spread the good word.
So Matt, you've been part of ACTRA since the 90s?
That's right. Yeah, I've been an ACTRA member since 1996.
So what got you into the performing arts in the first place?
I was a very dramatic child, and my parents caught on quite soon that a good outlet for me was just performing in any way, shape, or form, lip syncing, dancing, putting on little plays. So they got me into little theater groups as a child. And then I eventually ended up at a performing arts high school. And from there went to an open call and got a spot on a TV series and started up with an agent.
TV series? What TV series, Matt?
It was a TV series for the Disney Channel way back in the mid-90s called Flash Forward, actually featuring Ben Foster and Jewel Staite.
So Talia, you've been part of ACTRA, I believe, since 2020?
Yeah, it was 2020 indeed. Yeah.
So how did you get into the performing arts in the first place?
Well, I was a dancer very early on. So I started dancing when I was about 4 and just kind of kept going with it. I was really fortunate to, even though I grew up in a very small area out in the East Coast of New Brunswick, we had some pretty incredible supports and teachers. I remember my high school drama teacher I had met when I was probably 14 going to a theater camp. And so I wound up sort of getting an intensive training with him for 8 years, MMC always, and really learning the ropes. We even got to do things like go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and really had an extraordinarily immersive, and I was very, very fortunate to wind up in that situation. And then I just kind of never left it. So then moved around, did some schooling. Schooling didn't necessarily work out, and then dove into the industry. And funnily enough, my first actual ACTRA Toronto credit was for Murdoch Mysteries, which is sort of one of the entryway shows. And that was a few years ago, a few years prior to 2020, but I wasn't quite in the right place for myself. And then 2020 came around and booked the next ACTRA credit. And it wasn't a question to join the union at all at that point. So
you're all part of the LGBT community. Let's start with yourself, Matt. For yourself, when did you start recognizing your same-sex attraction, that you were attracted to men? When did this start crystallizing for you? You started becoming aware of this. I will say for myself, I was like probably, 6, 7, that sort of thing. For myself, how about you?
It can feel kind of nebulous at times thinking back to when things really started to coalesce, but I definitely felt as though I was different from the other kids at quite a young age. I'd say about the same, 6 or 7. But I think I didn't really start noticing that I really would have crushes on other guys until I was maybe about in 3rd grade. So maybe about 8 or 9. And I remember my very first crush was in 3rd grade, and I think I just thought I wanted to be a friend or be like him. Mm-hmm. But I can see now in hindsight that it was a little bit more.
I know those first crushes. They scar us so deeply.
They do.
Talia, for yourself, do you remember when you started becoming conscious, becoming aware that you were different when it came to maybe same-sex attraction, what have you?
Absolutely. I mean, my mother's Ecuadorian, so I spent a lot of time moving back and forth. And it's so funny because I so vividly remember I was 4 years old. It was my birthday party. And there was a girl that I just had the biggest desire. I wanted to dance with her so much. And I think it was sort of I like her dress or so, but and thinking back, I'm like, that was the first crush. And there are photos I have of her and I have no idea who this girl was, but she was at my birthday party. There are photos of us dancing, so set in stone. But to be honest, where I grew up, I didn't know of queer folks. I didn't have any examples of them. It wasn't really within my worldview, to be honest, until I was older. And then, there was teasing and a lot of, I think other people recognized it before I did. and I didn't quite understand what it was, but definitely in my early teens, I knew. And then it was the many-step process, I think, to becoming comfortable and realizing what that actually was, and then being able to make a conscious choice and then confidently move through the world with that.
So, David Gale, for yourself, when did you start recognizing your queerness, that you were attracted to other men? When did this start crystallizing for you?
Well, let's see. Back in the 1930s, it was a different Oh, wait a second. That's my parents' age. Sorry. I was getting that confused. I always had a great circle of friends, of guy friends, of girlfriends, of it was a sort of the time of free love, as it were, back in the 60s, when I was quite young in the 60s, like I was in my elementary years. And I don't know if I understood that it was anything different than anybody else, but I just had, I had a girlfriend who was in grade 1, because that's what you did. You had a girlfriend. Wow. And it was Sharon from down the street was my girlfriend. And then after that, it was Darlene, and she was my girlfriend. And
was she your girlfriend, or was she just your friend and she was a girl?
But we called each other girlfriend and boyfriend. Okay. And we were possessive as if we were girlfriend and boyfriend, but we didn't do anything about it. I mean, it's not like we kissed or did anything sexual at all. It was just social. It was just social. This is what adults do. And I would play office in the basement too, not with the girls, but I would okay, I'm going to do, this is my calculator or the machine, and this is my typewriter, and I have an office and I have some paper here. So it was just sort of play acting. Now that said, I was kind of already writing. I saw, this is, I think, probably the gayest story in a good way. I went to see Sound of Music when it came out in the 60s. My family took me to see it, and I was so taken by this musical and this movie, and it had to do with Nazis, and it had to do with families who sang together, and a young housekeeper who was secretly in love with it. It was just so much going on, and I immediately came home and rewrote my own version of it, where I was the gardener for this family of semi-orphaned children. And I never thought, oh my goodness, now I'm going to get to be with the dad. It just was like, I'm the gardener, and whatever happens after that, it's hate and love mixed was the name of the play. On retrospect, it might be a little bit of a gay story, possibly. And then, I continued that way actually until for many years. I just was sort of, as we call, eventually could be considered bisexual, and then eventually stopped having relationships, sexual relationships with women per se. Yeah, I sort of jumped ahead a bunch of years, but I have a long story, being a man of a certain age. There was nobody on TV to identify with. There was nobody really in the movies to identify with. And even in my community in Winnipeg, and I should say, I grew up in the Jewish community in Winnipeg, which was kind of like a small town within a city, because I went to a Jewish school. Lived in a Jewish neighborhood. I went to a Jewish summer camp, Jewish YMHA as it was. So it was all Jewish, and Jewish street. So it was kind of like a little village. I called it a shtetl that I grew up in. There was nobody there was one guy who was the caterer, who was a bachelor, never married bachelor. He was a caterer, but no one would said he was anything other than that. There were whispers, hushed whispers, I suppose. And then on TV, there was nobody that I identified with. I didn't identify with any of the performers. Paul Lynde was on Hollywood Squares. It was very sort of broad.
He was pretty gay, Paul Lynde.
Liberace, who would just get wilder and wilder and wilder with his jewels and his furs, and deny, even to his dying day, and won money in court that he was not gay. So those were. I said, well, that's not me. That's not who I am. Who am I? If I feel this way, and I knew I was attracted to boys and eventually men. It was hard.
So, all of you are professional actors. You are all part of the LGBT community. Over the past few years, there's been a lot of talk about who should be telling whose stories, who should be playing what roles. Some well-known actors received some backlash over the last few years. I'll just highlight two. Case in point, Eddie Redmayne, who played a trans character in the 2015 film The Danish Girl. And he actually, in 2021, he told the Sunday Times that if that period drama was made today, this is back in 2021, that he would not star in it. Another star, Halle Berry, received some backlash after word got out that she was looking to play a trans character. So, as actors, as part of the LGBT community, who should be playing what role? Matt, let's start with yourself. I know this is a big question and a big topic, but let's start there with who do you think should be playing what roles? Who should be telling whose stories? Talk to me about that and give your perspective as a professional actor, as someone part of the community. What's your take?
It's a huge question, and it's something that we've had many conversations about. And I think ultimately that we need to be able to tell our own stories, and people who are marginalized in real life need to have better support in the arts and in film and television in order to be demonstrated as being able to, and they certainly are, ready to tell their own stories. Because, as long as queer people and people from the 2S LGBTQIA plus community are being attacked and harassed in real life, then I don't think that there's room for straight cis actors to play those roles and win awards for those roles when, the lived reality for people within our community is not being celebrated. And so until folks in the 2S LGBTQIA plus community are on an equal footing, then I think that 2S LGBTQIA roles should go to people from that community, and so that those roles can be played authentically. That's where I stand on that issue.
Talia, what's your take?
Yeah, I think that I think ultimately actors should be able to play whichever roles they feel most comfortable in. I think that if someone is, say, male presenting and they want to play male presenting roles, then that's how it should be. In terms of the facts of folks, especially in terms of trans and non-binary roles on screen, so many of these actors are already facing the barrier of not being able to get into the room for other things. So when those roles do exist, I really do think they should be going to the folks who want to play them and who have those lived experiences. And I'm reminded of this when I was in my early 20s. I had a former acting teacher say to me, she'd heard I was doing a play, and in the play I was playing a lesbian, very apropos, and I guess she didn't know that I was out, or didn't really know about that, and she'd assumed I was straight because that's the default. And she said to me, "Wow, that really should be a special skill you add on your resume." I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "Yes, that you can do that you can do a same-sex kiss. That's a special skill." And this was, early 2010s. That's not a special skill. Even if I was straight, and I think that view is exactly the reason that we do need to have proper representation up there, and folks who are open to discussing these issues and the reality of the fact that being told that being able to kiss a woman was a special skill is a bit of a slap in the face. So yeah, I think that it's a really complex and nuanced topic, but ultimately representation saves lives. And so the more of that we can have, I think the better.
David?
Oh, I don't know how you can top representation saves lives. That was so good, Talia. Well, here's a take on it. There are people who say that it should be queer actors who play queer roles. And then it's countered with, well, wait a second, queer actors, they play straight roles. And they go, well, yes, queer actors grew up in a culture that was 99 or 98% predominantly heteronormative. They know, they've lived that experience by growing up with it all around them. So it's a little bit different than comparing that. Ryan Murphy, who's an American producer and creator, and I arguably he gives more authentic roles to queer performers, I think, than anyone in Hollywood. He really puts queer people in queer parts in his stuff. However, when he was shooting Halston, he used many gay performers in that series. However, the starring role went to Ewan McGregor, and of course he won an Emmy for it or whatever he won for it. So, that is argued. Well, if you want to sell your piece, if you want people to look at it, you got to have a star a star who can sell it. Benedict Cumberbatch should be an honorary queer by now. He's played so many queer characters and won so many awards for them. Come out already, buddy. It's an ongoing quandary, but we're living in a time where more and more, even set aside the issues of the queer issues, we're living in a time where more and more the public is demanding authenticity, simply not accepting non-authentic performers, all the way down to voices in animation, all the way, across the board, TV, film, you name it. More and more people are themselves saying, well, you know what? I don't feel right playing this character because, of the fact that these performers have not gotten a chance to do this ever. And now that there's more, presumably more parts, they can get them, and I don't want to take it away from them. So I think it's going to be an ongoing story for a while. But discussion is good. We're talking about it. That means that people care about it and want to hear about it. And that's how change happens.
I think that that's the key, what you just said there, David. We're talking about it. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case. We're talking about it. But I think that when it comes to social media, there's a rush to judgment and a rush to cancel someone. I think that when Halle Berry is in talks to potentially play a trans character, and then on Twitter and social media, people come down on her because of this story, I don't think that's necessarily the healthiest way to deal with something.
Oh, so good luck trying to change social media right now. I believe
absolutely
that genie is out of the bottle. Really, it's going to take a lot of work to change social media. And the jumping on. I'm not saying we shouldn't try, and I think we should speak our truths and speak what's right in our hearts. But I think their haters gotta hate, unfortunately. Which is
Matt, you wanted to say?
I think what I wanted to offer was that I think when you can have discussions like this and you can talk about topics that are nuanced and really get into the weeds of things, it becomes a lot easier to speak more compassionately. And I think one of the major challenges with social media is that people want to make a point and to say, for example, with this Halle Berry situation, to say, this shouldn't be happening. She shouldn't be, in this day and age, in talks to play a role like that. But instead of being able to have a conversation, which is impossible for your average person to have a conversation with Halle Berry, it ends up coming out in this very pointed, very angry way on social media. And what do we do when we don't have the power? Is we try to do the most we can, which is to, jump on the bandwagon to say, well, if that's what they're doing and not considering it to be wrong, well, then I don't want to see any of their movies. It becomes this sort of immediately jumping to the worst conclusion. But I think it's coming from a place that is feeling unempowered, but also wanting to make a better world. It's just something's getting lost in translation there, where it comes out in these very negative ways. But I think the desire is there to improve things.
I don't think this will ever happen, but my hope, my wish is that social media becomes a little bit more respectful. That'll never happen.
Well, everyone's leaving Twitter, so maybe whatever will come up in its stead will be something that's a bit kinder and gentler. Let's start that. Let's start a social media that's kinder and gentler. Just a little side note here. My friend is Halle Berry's business manager, wealth management person in LA. And so we were at the same bat mitzvah together a few years back because it was his daughter's bat mitzvah. I didn't have the chutzpah to go over and start talking to Halle because, it just wasn't really right at the time to go up and say, big fan, to fanboy all over Halle Berry at this bat mitzvah. But anyway, a little side note there.
Way to name drop.
Oh, yeah. There were other stars there as well. I'm not going to go there.
So my last question for all of you is simply this. What's coming up? Matt, what's coming up next for you? What are you working on?
Well, then anything that I want to talk about is something that's actually coming up for outACTRAto, which is we have a reading series called Working the Scene in Rainbow, which is where we reach out to us LGBTQIA+ writers in Ontario and get them to submit a scene, whether it's from something that they have already written, a larger piece, a show, a film, something. We get them to submit that, and then we select 4 scenes, and we have members from the community, members from performers who are in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community read those scenes. So queer writers get to hear their work read by queer performers, and we invite people to come and watch. We invite industry partners, casting directors, writing agents, so on and so forth. And it's just such a fantastic event, and it's such a treat to see just how much talent and creativity already exists in our community, just waiting to be discovered. So I'm super excited about that. That's coming up on the 19th of June.
The 19th of June, excellent. Talia, anything you care to share? What's coming up for you?
Yes, I'm quite fortunate right now. First, I will shout out, though, at the Inside Out Festival, we've got the Queer Stories for competition winner, Plant Daddy, which is such a lovely, funny, poignant, wonderful, wonderful piece that I'm so excited to get its big premiere on the big screen there. But personally, I'm currently actually rehearsing in Atlanta, Georgia, to be going on an international tour with a brand new queer play called At Birth. So we'll be premiering in Dublin, and then we do a run in London, Prague, Atlanta, Nashville, and then finish off in New York during Pride Month. So that'll be May to June, and it's a very gay play. And,
who wrote it?
I wrote it with my wonderful writing and creative partner Ty Autry, who is also starring in it with me. We're also doing the design and the producing for it. So it's really been a passion project, but it's just such a privilege to be able to bring a very queer story around the world and share it with audiences everywhere, and to have the amount of support that we've gotten from all of our different venues that are there, and to be able to talk about really difficult topics, and the fact that we are going to be performing this show in the Deep South and talking about things like abortion and queer families and what queer families can look like as well, because it's so different, and why do we have such narrowed ideas of what it is to have that, and also the difficulty that comes along with creating a family and what that actually looks like. So to be able to be in a place where we're able to challenge people's ideas and perceptions, and also bring a lot of fun to it, and it has a happy ending. And so it's really nice to have a happy queer story that we're sharing, and I'm really over the moon about it. So yeah, that's where I'll be.
So Talia, here's a question that I'm sure inquiring minds are wanting to ask right now. Are you going to imply your special skill of kissing?
So,
do you kiss?
You know what I'll say?
They didn't forget that.
I will actually be using my special skill of kissing a man on stage.
Oh.
So that's also, we sort of just a little bit of a synopsis, turning it on its head. I play a lesbian, and my writing partner plays a gay man, and they end up sleeping together and getting pregnant. And chaos ensues. And so it's funny that someone who's in a workshop said, what's fascinating is that you somehow made a man and a woman having sex the most awkward thing in the world. Because it's not natural in this case. But to look at that, I was like, wow, we're learning a lot about each other. And because I don't know a lot about the other side of it, but I know my own side. So special skill is now kissing men, I guess.
David Gale.
Well, I have that special skill as well.
Same.
David Gale, what's coming up for you?
Well, I just hosted the ACTRA Awards, which was a small event this year, and I also hosted the Cale Chernin Awards. So that just happened, and first of all, I'm so proud of my gay family that is outACTRAto. These incredible new co-chairs. I guess not so new yet now, but really so proud where you come from, where you're going. The future looks so bright thanks to you. So thank you for being in those positions. Thank you. And then other than that, it's like ACTRA, and let me think, ACTRA. A lot of ACTRA all the time. ACTRA is my wife and my husband, and I don't have a child, but they're my spouses.
Well said. I have to say, Matt, Talia, David, thank you all for your time. Well said, well done, and thank you for being on the show.
Mark, thank you so much for having us. This has been such a pleasure, truly.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do for the community as well. It's really wonderful to have this platform at all.
Thank you, Mark. Anytime.
For more information on outACTRAto, simply visit ACTRAtoronto.com.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out the socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms, including audible.com and iHeartRadio. Finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, despite all the craziness in the world these days, know this, that we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Agnes. My new record, Magic Still Exists, is out now. You are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.